Well, today I'm going to go over some of the most common mistakes that people make when protecting their palms. This is especially good info for people that are new to protecting your palms. And so this applies mainly to people that are covering their palms or heating their palms with either lights or heat tape or any other thing that you're doing. And so we'll get right to the first thing. First mistake people make is not putting a temperature sensor in their enclosure or in their palm, especially when they're new, to see what temperature the palm and the heating that you're doing is actually keeping the palm at. And these can be purchased pretty cheap, either Amazon, Walmart, where you want to get them. Here in the US, they cost like 15 bucks for just like one, or you can get these more elaborate setups that have several. I use this one called Ambient Weather right here, but there's probably some better ones, and I think even some newer high-tech ones that go up to your phone. And here, looking up at our mule palm, which is like 18 feet plus. Our second mistake that people do is not using some sort of temperature controller. The one I use is a Thermocube, and I always try to keep them dry or whatever, so they're in this plastic bag. But that way you want whatever heat source you're using to come on at a certain temperature and off at a certain temperature, so it doesn't get too hot or too cold. And this particular one comes on at 35 and goes off at 45, and they have different Thermocube temps, but this is the main one people use. And some people use like a little bit more high-tech one that lets you set your temperature at any thing you want. But if you don't have this, some of your heating can stay on too much and overheat your palm, and you don't want that. So you need to use one of these temperature controllers in most cases. And as we look at our waggy palm here, the next mistake I see a lot of people making, or it's not necessarily a mistake, I just think it's overkill, is a lot of people will not wrap their palm fronds up, but they'll build a big, huge structure over the entire palm, which sometimes can be very large for some people. And it's really easy in most palms to wrap the fronds and tie them up, which make the palm, in most cases, less than a 2 by 2 foot size. But some people build boxes 3, 4, 5, 8 feet wider or more, and it gets to be a huge box and hard to heat. But all mine, I try to wrap in as small enclosure as possible. And as we look at a close-up of one of our Trachycarpus fortunais, our windmill palm, it's got some seed on it still ripening. We'll talk about one of the mistakes that I see a lot, which is very damaging to a lot of the palms, is they will wrap the palm with lights. This is mini lights, but they wrap them with the palm with the bigger lights, the C7 or C9 lights, which are Christmas lights that have the big bulbs. And they wrap that especially around the spear of the palm, and then they'll wrap a material over it, a cloth or a frost cloth or something like that. And those wrapped in that particular manner will burn the palm. And if you have bigger lights touching the fronds or any type of green part of the palm, it'll burn it. And also there's some ways to burn the palm, like turning the heater or something like that directly on the palm and palm spear, or having a big bulb directly on the spear. Things like that can burn it. So the only two things that you can wrap directly onto the palm and be safe are either these mini lights or possibly the heat tape that's on a thermostat. But other than that, you better be extremely careful. you can put the bulbs like the C7 or C9 loose, like if you had them just hanging out here in a box, but they're not wrapped directly to the trunk or the spear, and they're just used as a general heat source. That's where the confusion comes in. So you can do that, that's fine, but you don't want to wrap them, mummy wrap them is what it's called, on the palm. And as we have a look at our Sable, Louisiana here, one of the other mistakes people make is wrapping a palm directly with plastic, either black plastic or clear plastic, it doesn't matter. If it's wrapped especially directly over the palm in like a mummy wrap type fashion, when the sun hits that, you're gonna fry your palm. It's not something you can leave on long term. And the plastic will actually transmit cold at night and to the fronds if it's touching them. And so the only way you should use plastic is if it's like a rainproofing material that's over another type of cloth or blanket or something like that on your palm. And if the plastic is on the outside in the sun, it should not be left on long term when it's in the sun is out hot. The only way you could leave the plastic on that way is to cover it once again with some sort of cloth over the top of the plastic so that the sun doesn't heat up inside there, and you'd have to watch about the heat and condensation in it that way. But plastic is very dangerous in most cases, so you gotta be very careful. And what's similar to that is people will build boxes with either plexiglass or plastic on it, and if it's in the sun, you better be really careful because that can heat up quite a bit, and you really don't want your palm going through this heat cold cycle during the day, heating up real hot and then going down at night very cold. And so it's best to keep the palm, when you're protecting it, in the cool side of things. So most palms, that would be like 35 to 50 or 60 at the most. And next, as we take a look at some of our sable palms, to the left we got a sable minor, and then to the right of it we have a palmetto, and then to the right of it is a brazoria. But the next mistake or misunderstanding that people have is wind chill versus absolute temps. And so people see the wind chill and it might be, let's say 0, and the temperature might be 15, and they want to know what temperature to protect the palm. And the wind chill, it only applies to things like people that are putting out body heat. The absolute temperature is what you want to go by. Plants don't experience wind chill. The only thing the wind does to plants is the cold air can cause a desiccation, which is a type of drying out of the fronds or leaves of a plant when they can't get enough moisture through the roots or up through the plants when they're cold. But otherwise, wind chill does not matter at all. The wind itself will matter. It might affect your enclosure and that sort of thing, but and your heating, you gotta make sure that it doesn't affect it. But other than that, wind chill itself is not the temperature that you protect your palms based on. It's based on the absolute temp. Next, we'll talk about, as far as your connections, something everybody overlooks is you want to make sure there's something called a GFCI, which is if your electric cords or whatever, if any of your electricity comes in contact with water, it'll trip something on most houses called a GFCI circuit. And so all of your connections should be, the loose ends where they plug in should be taped, and any type of connections together should be taped. And if possible, they shouldn't even be laying on the ground like this. This one's up high. You don't want, like if you're in an area where it floods, you don't want this like a connected cord to be laying in the water. because it might trip your GFCI and turn off the power to your cords. And similar to getting the power is you want to make sure if you're really serious, to have a generator in case the power goes out, because you can do all the protecting in the world, and if the power goes out, then you're in a little bit of trouble. So you need to have a generator handy, especially if you're protecting a bunch of palms. As we take a look at my temperature sensor here, another thing to be cautious of is relying on the weather forecast entirely, because a lot of times the weather forecast, we all know, is wrong. And a quick example is in 2018, the day of, they had forecast a low of 8 degrees Fahrenheit here for us, and it was 8 degrees at around 6 p.m. and as the night went on, it went down to close to 0. So they were wrong by almost 8 degrees. So on the same day, and that's because that front, the cold air, just kept moving a little farther down than they thought. And so you have to be kind of cautious of that type of thing, and make sure you're prepared and don't get caught off guard, especially if they're talking about this Arctic type weather if you're in the United States moving down. Out here on this wet and kind of windy day, we'll talk about one more thing: either protecting your palms too early or too late. It's kind of a pretty much a very difficult little task to make sure you do it right, because if you do it too early, you'll have a lot of warm days, and you'll kind of feel like you've got them covered up too soon. But if you wait too late, you will have some problems, like they might be wet when you're trying to cover them, or they might have snow, or even worse, ice on them, and that'll be very difficult to cover and protect. So it's a fine line between watching the forecast there and picking out the times you want to cover your palms. So be careful. That's one reason that on some of these palms I go ahead and put the lights on them, but I don't cover them yet, just so I have some of it done. But if these palm fronds get snow or ice or something like that, or are wet, they're going to be difficult to cover up and do it properly. So you generally want to try to find a fairly nice day that occurs before you see some of this bad weather coming in, and usually that happens, but you just have to be careful in your area and kind of make those decisions on your own. And so here, generally, like the windmill palms, or generally, if we are going to cover them, it's going to be somewhere between mid-December to mid-January. And if you're around a lot and here and can watch them, you know, they might not need to be covered at all. It's just kind of a year-by-year thing here. But anyway, that's one of the dangers: covering them too early, getting too far ahead of yourself, or waiting too late when the snow and ice is out there and got you where you can't cover them easily. And next, you're going to want to have your supplies well in advance of anything happening, especially if you're somebody that only protects very rarely, maybe certain years or something like that. You need to have your plan in place and your supplies picked out. And because of that, once in a lifetime cold comes, and just announce it a few days beforehand, and you don't have the proper supplies to protect your palm or plants, and you might be out of luck. So it's best to have everything in advance. Well, so hope you've enjoyed taking a look, and hopefully I pointed out something that might help you. And we hope everybody has a good winter. And if you have any questions, just put them below. And please like and subscribe to these videos, and that helps us make more videos for you. And we'll see you later.